following program contains explicit calls to political action. If you are addicted to the tax-exempt status, Randall might not be right for you. Check with your little sister.
Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world. Have mercy on us. Lamb of God, you take away the sins of the world. Grant us peace.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I think we can all sleep easier now. We know that Big Brother is monitoring our every move, our every conversation. And I can only hope that the federal government gets its hands on that little squealer, Edward Snowden. Yeah, you might go to Hong Kong, but you're gonna be chop suey soon, Bucky. All right, look, I want you to know right now, I think what the man did was right, and we're gonna play his entire film clip on today's show, right after this. Who are these blistering idiots who keep picking dates for Jesus' return? Jesus doesn't even know. Not even I know. Only the Father knows, and he's not talking. Not talking. Welcome to today's program, Fred. Edward Snowden. His name will be in history books for the rest of my life, for the rest of your life, for the rest of your children's lives. And either he will be remembered in our history books as a champion for American liberty or as a threat to the state. We are going to play the entire video footage that he released. You've seen snippets of it by now on various news outlets. We are going to let this man have his say on this television show and play the entire recording in 4 segments during the program. You have to think long and hard over what is at stake in his disclosures. He has, without question, put his life at risk. None of us will be surprised if he turns up dead. He has certainly put his freedom at risk, and he has already said that he never expects to see this country again, and perhaps never see his family again. The question is simple. Did he protect the people of the United States of America by his disclosure, or did he put them in harm's way? That question is answered in part by whether or not you think, or that any credible argument could be made, that the United States government needs access to and a full record of every email, every phone call, every instant message, every iChat that every American citizen is involved in. If you do not define that as tyranny, then nothing is. All right, we're going to spend a good bit of time on this over the next few days, but let us begin now. I introduce to you 29-year-old CIA analyst Edward Snowden.
My name's Ed Snowden. I'm 29 years old. I work for Booz Allen Hamilton as an infrastructure analyst for NSA in Hawaii.
community?
I've been a systems engineer, systems administrator, senior advisor for the Central Intelligence Agency, solutions consultant, and a telecommunications information systems officer.
There came some point in time when you crossed this line of thinking about being a whistleblower to making the choice to actually become a whistleblower. Walk people through that decision-making process.
When you're in positions of privileged access, like a systems administrator for these sort of intelligence community agencies, you're exposed to a lot more information on a broader scale than the average employee. And because of that, you see things that may be disturbing, but over the course of a normal person's career, you'd only see one or two of these instances. When you see everything, you see them on a more frequent basis. And you recognize that some of these things are actually abuses. And when you talk to people about them, in a place like this where this is the normal state of business, people tend not to take them very seriously and move on from them. But over time, that awareness of wrongdoing sort of builds up, and you feel compelled to talk about it. And the more you talk about it, the more you're ignored, the more you're told it's not a problem, until eventually you realize that these things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who was simply hired by the government.
We'll be right back with the continuation of this interview. Every day in America, over 3,500 babies are torn apart by abortion. Shouldn't all babies, like this living, unborn child, have the right to life? Baby killing will only end when Americans see the truth of what abortion does to innocent children. You can help end this Holocaust by showing the truth of abortion in your area with a Face the Truth tour. Go to FaceTheTruthAmerica.com to set up a Face the Truth tour in your area. The babies and their mothers will be eternally grateful. In the 1980s, banks introduced designer checks. When my buddy George Johnson inquired at the bank, they had nothing for pro-lifers. So the Johnsons created beautiful pro-life bank checks showing babies with a strong pro-life message. You can speak out for life with every check you write, whether personal or business checks. Be a voice for babies with these pro-life checks. Go to prolifecheckguy.com to see more. That's prolifecheckguy.com. Welcome back to the program, friend. In 1971, Daniel Ellsberg released the so-called Pentagon Papers to the New York Times. The Nixon administration was frantic to keep those papers secret. It showed details about the Vietnamese War, the fact that the government believed that they could not win the war, secret operations in nearby countries. In other words, we were involved in espionage, war, killing in other countries without war being declared, and in direct violation of the United States Constitution. And Daniel Ellsberg is remembered as a hero for what he did. Well, over the weekend, he had this to say about Edward Snowden. In my estimation, there has not been in American history a more important leak than Edward Snowden's release of NSA material, and that definitely includes the Pentagon Papers of 40 years ago. Snowden's whistleblowing gives us the possibility to roll back a key part of what has amounted to an executive coup against the U.S. Constitution. And he also said that it can't be overestimated to this democracy. It gives us a chance, I think, for drawing back from the total surveillance state that we could say we're in process of becoming. I'm afraid we have become. That is what he has revealed. We owe a debt to this man. I continue now with his interview.
These things need to be determined by the public, not by somebody who was simply hired by the government.
Talk a little bit about how the American surveillance state actually functions. Does it target the actions of Americans?
NSA and the intelligence community in general is focused on getting intelligence wherever it can, by any means possible, that it believes on the grounds of sort of a self-certification that they serve the national interest. Originally, we saw that focus very narrowly tailored as foreign intelligence gathered overseas. Now, increasingly, we see that it's happening domestically. And to do that, the NSA specifically, targets the communications of everyone. It ingests them by default. It collects them in its system, and it filters them, and it analyzes them, and it measures them, and it stores them for periods of time, simply because that's the easiest, most efficient, and most valuable way to achieve these ends. So while they may be intending to target someone associated with a foreign government or someone that they suspect of terrorism, they're collecting your communications to do so. Any analyst at any time can target anyone, any selector anywhere. Where those communications will be picked up depends on the range of the sensor networks and the authorities that that analyst is empowered with. Not all analysts have the ability to target everything, but I, sitting at my desk, certainly had the authorities to wiretap anyone, from you or your accountant to a federal judge to even the president if I had a personal email. I think that the public is owed an explanation of the motivations behind the people who make these disclosures that are outside of the democratic model. When you are subverting the power of government, that's a fundamentally dangerous thing to democracy. And if you do that in secret consistently, as the government does when it wants to benefit from a secret action that it took, it'll kind of give its officials a mandate to go, hey, tell the press about this thing and that thing, so the public is on our side. But they rarely, if ever, do that when an abuse occurs. That falls to individual citizens, but they're typically maligned. It becomes a thing of these people are against the country, they're against the government. But I'm not. I'm no different from anybody else. I don't have special skills. I'm just another guy who sits there day to day in the office, watches what's happening, and goes, this is something that's not our place to decide. The public needs to decide whether these programs and policies are right or wrong. And I'm willing to go on the record to defend the authenticity of them and say, I didn't change these. I didn't modify the story. This is the truth. This is what's happening. You should decide whether we need to be doing this.
The question is this, friends. Are we, the people of this republic, going to determine if we, the people, are being spied on by our government officials? I'll be right back with more of Edward Snowden's interview. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Welcome back to the program, friend. If Eric Snowden does not hope to spend the rest of his life behind bars, we can only hope that he gets to Iceland as quick as possible. In the next 2 segments, he will discuss his future. And this is, of course, for his leaking the NSA and the CIA's project called Prism, in which the federal government is literally spying on every single American with a telephone, with internet service. I let him continue speaking for himself.
Have you given thought to what it is that the U.S. government's response to your conduct is, in terms of what they might say about you, how they might try to depict you, what they might try to do to you?
Yeah, I could be, rendered by the CIA. I could have people come after me, or any of their third-party partners. They work closely with a number of other nations. Or they could pay off the triads, or any of their agents or assets. We've got a CIA station just up the road in the consulate here in Hong Kong, and I'm sure they're going to be very busy for the next week. And that's a fear I'll live under for the rest of my life, however long that happens to be. You can't come forward against the world's most powerful intelligence agencies and be completely free from risk, because they're such powerful adversaries that no one can meaningfully oppose them. If they want to get you, they'll get you in time. But at the same time, you have to make a determination about what it is that's important to you. And if living unfreely but comfortably is something you're willing to accept, and I think many of us are, it's the human nature. You can get up every day, you can go to work, you can collect your large paycheck for relatively little work against the public interest, and go to sleep at night after watching your shows. But if you realize that that's the world that you helped create, and it's going to get worse with the next generation and the next generation who extend the capabilities of this sort of architecture of oppression, you realize that you might be willing to accept any risk. And it doesn't matter what the outcome is, so long as the public gets to make their own decisions about how that's applied.
Why should people care about surveillance?
You don't have to have done anything wrong. You simply have to eventually fall under suspicion from somebody, even by a wrong call, and then they can use the system to go back in time and scrutinize every decision you've ever made, every friend you've ever discussed something with, and attack you on that basis to sort of derive suspicion from an innocent life and paint anyone in the context of a wrongdoer.
We are currently sitting in a room in Hong Kong, which is where we are because you traveled here. Talk a little bit about why it is that you came here, and specifically there are going to be people who will speculate that what you really intend to do is to defect to the country that many see as the #1 rival of the United States, which is China, and that what you're really doing is essentially seeking to aid an enemy of the United States with which you intend to seek asylum. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So there's a couple assertions in those arguments that are sort of embedded in the questioning of the choice of Hong Kong. The first is that China is an enemy of the United States. It's not. I mean, there are conflicts between the United States government and the Chinese PRC government, but the peoples inherently, we don't care. We trade with each other freely. We're not at war. We're not in armed conflict, and we're not trying to be. We're the largest trading partners out there for each other. Additionally, Hong Kong has a strong tradition of free speech. People think, oh, China, great firewall. Mainland China does have significant restrictions on free speech, but the people of Hong Kong have a long tradition of protesting in the streets, of making their views known. The internet is not filtered here, no more so than any other Western government. And I believe that the Hong Kong government is actually independent in relation to a lot of other leading Western governments.
I am convinced that we will owe this man a great debt of gratitude. May history remember him kindly. I'm going to take a quick break. In our next segment, we will also hear from Senator Rand Paul on some action he intends to take, which might push back against Big Brother. But it's going to take a lot of us, not just Rand Paul. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books on theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last. Welcome back. In a moment, we're going to hear from Senator Rand Paul, but first, the final portion of Edward Snowden's interview.
If your motive had been to harm the United States and help its enemies, or if your motive had been personal material gain, were there things that you could have done with these documents to advance those goals that you didn't end up doing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, anybody in the positions of access with the technical capabilities that I had could, suck out secrets, pass them on the open market to Russia. They always have an open door, as we do. I had access to, the full rosters of everyone working at the NSA, the entire intelligence community, and undercover assets all around the world, the locations of every station we have, what their missions are, and so forth. If I had just wanted to harm the U.S., that you could shut down the surveillance system in an afternoon. But that's not my intention, and I think for anyone making that argument, they need to think, if they were in my position, and you live a privileged life, you're living in Hawaii in paradise and making a ton of money, what would it take to make you leave everything behind? The greatest fear that I have regarding the outcome for America of these disclosures is that nothing will change. People will see in the media all of these disclosures. They'll know the lengths that the government is going to grant themselves powers unilaterally to create greater control over American society and global society. But they won't be willing to take the risks necessarily to stand up and fight to change things, to force their representatives to actually take a stand in their interests. And the months ahead, the years ahead, it's only going to get worse until eventually there will be a time where policies will change, because the only thing that restricts the activities of the surveillance state are policy. Even our agreements with other sovereign governments, we consider that to be a stipulation of policy rather than a stipulation of law. And because of that, a new leader will be elected. They'll flip the switch, say that because of the crisis, because of the dangers that we face in the world, some new and unpredicted threat, we need more authority, we need more power, and there will be nothing the people can do at that point to oppose it, and it'll be turnkey tyranny.
All right, where do we go from here? Over the next few days, I will spend an enormous amount of time talking about this because, in my opinion, the very survival of a free people is at stake, and we might already be on life support. The question is whether or not the public will have the will to fight against people in the political court like Obama and Feinstein and Republican Pete King from New York, people who believe in Big Brother. Thank God for the recent emergence of Senator Rand Paul, son of former Congressman and presidential candidate Ron Paul. Here is what he had to say on Fox over the weekend.
Well, they're looking at 1 billion phone calls a day is what I read in the press, and that doesn't sound to me like a modest invasion of privacy. It sounds like an extraordinary invasion of privacy. The Fourth Amendment says that you have to look at, and you can ask for a warrant for a specific to a person, place, and the items. This is a general warrant. This is what we objected to, and what our founding fathers partly fought the revolution over, is they did not want generalized warrants where you could go from house to house with soldiers looking for things, or now from computer to computer to phone without specifying who you're targeting. And I'm going to be seeing if I can challenge this at the Supreme Court level. I'm going to be asking all the internet providers and all of the phone companies, ask your customers to join me in a class action lawsuit. If we get 10 million Americans saying we don't want our phone records looked at, then maybe somebody will wake up and say things will change in Washington.
We will keep you posted on whatever Senator Paul does. In the meantime, I urge you to go to the phone number that you see at the bottom of your screen and to continue where we left off the other day. Namely, contact your congressman, both your U.S. senators, and say to them you demand hearings on how our government has gotten this far out of control. Who asked for this court order? You might also want to let them know that you believe that Edward Snowden did the right thing ethically. You have to remember, friends, that the American War for Independence against the British government was an act of treason, okay? It was treason against a tyrannical government, but it was the defense of liberty and the defense of human rights. So sometimes when you do the right thing, you're actually having to stand against your own government.